Right, morning all. Beep, 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 beep. All that's coming from the Jester News ask. Right, just a quick one, which is a follow-up to my thing yesterday about Drag Queen Storytime. Or Story Hour. It's got its own acronym now. DQSH. It's become incarnate. It's become real. We're really practicing structuralism here. Putting things together. Anyway, by the by. So, talking to my parents last night in the seminar. It was brilliant. We're in month 5 and they're on fire, these good folk, right? So we're really doing well moving forward. Let's try and find some common ground here and talk about something in terms of how we're going to understand this. And it is incredibly nuanced and people don't think it is. Now, what's not incredibly nuanced is whether it should be there or not. Now, Kitty Demure said it far better than I. Take them to Chuck E. Cheese. You know, the wonderful, divine-esque Kitty Demure said it much better than I. So I have no argument with the fact that I don't think it should be happening at all. Get volunteers in. You know, get scientists in to speak to them. Successful authors, right? Do that. So, I don't think it should be happening at all. But it is. And the problem is, how do we get it to stop? How do we say to people, look, this probably isn't a good idea? It's probably not a good idea. Now, the guy that's doing this, that's causing all the troubles, he ain't your problem. Right, for God's sake. You know, if he was dressed normally, he wouldn't have a problem. If he went and, I'll volunteer. I'll come and read them Little Red Riding Hood, or I'll come and read them, you know, the Gulag Archipelago, whatever it is you read to children. I'm not very good at knowing these things with these creatures. So that's not a thing. So let's just think about the categorization error here, what the error we're making as individuals. What they're dressed as is one problem. What they do is another problem. But that's not the heart of this. At the heart of this is what they are reading. That's what we've got to get our head around, right? They are applying, i.e. they are practicing queer theory, gender ideology, and critical race theory. In the case of the drag queen in question, their book contains elements of critical race theory. It also queers the story of the 3 Billy Goats Gruff, etc. And in doing so, it implicates gender into the normal thinking patterns of children. That is pure applied postmodernism. They're using it. It's not that they're being it, they're actually practicing it. The same as we're seeing in universities where they're queering STEM. STEM now, we're going to do it with science by consensus. That's practicing postmodernism. Queer, and the 3 usually come together. They can't help themselves, right? The 3 usually come together. So we've got a problem. Because if you, you know, your auntie that, you know, she's 72, but she's got lots of stories to tell and she's quite a character, you'd stick her in front of them and none of you would bat an eyelid. None of you would bat an eyelid. If you think that the form of this is taking and what they are doing is going to go away if you get rid of Drag Queen Story Hour, is naive. The fact that they've done it with Drag Queen Story Hour means we can see them. Because if they'd done it with your aunt, and she'd gone in and gone, welcome kiddies. Now, here we're going to talk about your 500 gender identities. We're going to talk about the fact that Martin Luther King was wrong. You wouldn't know about it. You wouldn't know about it, right? So you've got to be aware that what we're talking about is the nub of the problem. I'm not saying that any else of it isn't, but at the heart of this, and what we need to be collaborative about is understanding that what they are doing is they are practicing queer theory. They are practicing gender ideology. They are practicing critical race theory in front of your children. That's the issue. Now, how do we get around that? There's this thing called the public sector equality duty. Now, some of you may be familiar with this, some of you may not, in which part of the public sector equality duty, and it's an onerous duty, right? Part of the public sector equality duty is that you must promote good relations between those who have a protected characteristic in the Equality Act and those who don't, i.e. everyone. In which case, if you're telling Tories, if you're telling stories, I need more tea, if you're telling stories to young children, or if you're teaching young children in school, right, if you're teaching it or in university, if you are applying, as in using, practicing, actually practicing and using queer theory, gender ideology and critical race theory, my money's on you are breaching your public sector equality duty. Libraries are covered by the public sector equality duty. We enforce the public sector equality duty and do so through the need for what's called a impact assessment, equality impact assessment. then that would be something that I think would be worth pursuing in terms of finding out how someone who breaches the public sector equality duty is likely to be brought to book. Now, this is not my specialist area. I probably should make it so, but it isn't. There'll be those of you out there who know far more about this than me. And please do chip in the comments and subscribe. And give me a bit of a whip in if I've got it wrong. I think the public sector equality duty is the way to go because the person that's doing it is immaterial. It's immaterial. And in your equality impact assessment, does the act, performance, reading in any way undermine? Then all you need is a list. Equality of opportunity, diversity of opinion. Is it partisan? Right? Now then the thing becomes, but how do you define partisan? Well, the secret is, if you're having to define it so that you can say that it is or it isn't, it is. Right? Because nobody's going to think somebody coming in and reading Little Red Riding Hood, is a problem unless you make the wolf the good guy and Granny the bad guy, which is what this stuff does. Now we know what the story behind Little Red Riding Hood is and why it's so important. It's the wolf that's hard done by. It's Granny that's the bad guy. Now listen, that's fun, right? Okay, you want to put that on a film, stick it on a screen and watch as this poor wolf is outdone. They did it. They've done it in similar things. They did a film called Tucker and Dale versus Evil, where these two guys who were like the hillbillies from, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Head cheese. Don't make me get the hose, Cletus. That sort of stuff. They did it, where they were the good guys. And, these stupid co-eds that came out and farted about in the country weren't the good guys, they were the bad guys. And that's fun. It tickles your fancy because it takes what you expect is coming and turns it into something else. You shouldn't be doing that in a library. You shouldn't be doing it in the classroom. Okay, it's not your personal fiefdom in which to practice your queer theory or your applied critical social justice. Right? It's not. So I think we need to look at the public sector equality duty and forget the presentation for the moment. Yes, if there's evidence of, presentation that is just plain bloody wrong for 6-year-olds, call it out. But if we're going to want to find something that's going to be able to bludgeon any occurrence of this nonsense, it's going to have to be through regulations in the public sector equality duty. Because that will be permanent if we can get them to be adopted. That's what we should know. No equality impact assessment in some cases, I imagine. No, people are going, right, well, we need to DBS and record check. And you're not going to do that, right? If you DBS and record check, we'll end up in trouble. And I'll tell you for why. You can't do an enhanced DBS check just if you fancy. I've looked. You actually have to have a particular reason for doing it. The likelihood is that somebody, what are you going to do? Going to dress up as whatever it may be, go to the library, and then, something's going to happen, despite the fact that there are 20 parents there, 15 teachers. We have to be very specific about this. Everybody comes under safeguarding. You've got to remember that. It doesn't matter if it's your granny. Everybody comes under safeguarding, but it's got to be proportionate. Okay? So it's the equality impact assessment at that level that this should be discovered. Anybody who's performing, teaching, or offering services to children will have a DBS check. And if they're a nefarious bugger, and they haven't been caught, DBS check isn't going to show it anyway. So what we have to do is look at the public sector equality duty, because that applies, and should apply, not just to somebody who is a drag queen who innocently wants to sit there dressed like Dame Evadne Hinge or the Queen, rather than, some flaming creature from the beyond with a butt monkey dildo thing in their backside, right? Whatever it may be, okay? And to do so, they need to be checked. And they need to have the public sector equality duty and the equality impact assessment done. So it doesn't matter who they are. What's the story? What's the morality they're teaching children? These are not 16-year-old clodhoppers, right? They're not. These are children, okay? These are children to whom Santa Claus is real. Right? These are children. They're still playing with their own feces in some cases. That's what children are like. They do all sorts of awful things, right? So for God's sake, let's think about it in terms of the public sector equality duty. Tell me if I'm wrong. I'm open to hearing that I'm wrong about this. Well, I'm open to hearing that I'm wrong about anything. But am I really that wrong? Or in fact, does it not matter what the presentation is? It matters what the content is. Because at least with them presenting like this, they currently haven't noused that the best idea to get their ridiculous theories into practice would be not to go in dressed as a drag queen at all, but just volunteer to your local reading club and sit in front of the children and go, now what's interesting is, children, that when we do the story now about the gingerbread man, not the gingerbread man, but Hansel and Gretel is this. Hansel and Gretel, who were of indeterminate gender and in fact may well have been non-binary, pansexual, morbid bum wipers, right? Okay, we're going into the woods. Gosh, said Hansel and Gretel, we're going into the woods, but yet, we're unidentified in terms of who we are. We may well be X, we may well be Y. And the witches there going, just find me 2 fucking children, I can't be arsed with this. So, it's the content. That's what we've got to be asking. What's the content? Because that's what they've been doing, keeping it from parents. We know they have. The schools have been keeping it from parents, right? They're doing it under the idea that it's commerciality. Stonewall keeps everything that's going on in business from anybody that wants to ask for an FOI. They have to do this in secret because that is the problem. It's the content. Ask yourself the question, if somebody went in dressed as Mrs. Doubtfire, would you have a problem? Oh, hello, do you love the book, Stuart Little? Yeah. Would you have a problem? If Marlene Dietrich went in, or if Mae West went in, both of whom were drag kings, by the way, went in to read, would you have a problem? Right, so the problem is the sexualization element, the immediate sexualization. Don't be sideswiped by that. They can change their clothes. That's not the problem we should have. The problem we've got is, what is the content? So let me know what you think. Subscribe, and I hope this proved useful because it suddenly occurred to me when I rolled out of bed this morning. Subscribe. I need you to subscribe and share this. Right, let's see if we can find somebody that's got public sector equality duty experience that's much more in depth than mine and may be able to offer us some guidance on it. That's what I think we should be doing. All right, anyway, listen, have a great day. It's Monday. It's my day off, see? I'm not like normal people. So I'm waiting now, because it's early, so I can do something. Don't know what I'm going to do, but I can do something. I've got 2 meetings this morning, but then it's my day off. So thank you very much for listening, and subscribe and do the usual blog, Patreon, come and be a warrior teacher, all the stuff I usually say. Other than that, thank you so much for listening. Let's keep going, folks. Collaboration is everything.